Welcome to another episode of 10-Minute Land Surveyor. The other day I had a surveyor friend of mine reach out to me. They're doing a jack and bore, which means they're pushing a pipe underground, not an open trench, to put I think it was a 120-inch pipe beneath a freeway. And don't worry if you don't know what that is. I'm going to explain to you a little bit how a jack and bore works. It's similar to tunneling, and I'm talking about how you measure the center. See, the trouble is that you get a lot of mud in there, a lot of debris. It's hard to tell if you're on the center. And what you're checking for is the horizontal and vertical alignment, particularly at each section, to make sure this thing isn't buckling vertically or that you're not straying off horizontally. So your goal as a surveyor is to come in through the shaft and to check the center of this pipe, both for alignment, horizontal and vertical, as I mentioned. And I'm going to talk a little bit about working underground and doing some of these things, particularly, but mostly focus on the jig. I'm going to start out with, if you look at the screen here, this is me a number of years ago working in a underground pipe, and this was failing, and this particular storm drain line was subject to tidal influence, so this would fill all the way up with water a couple times a day. And so we had to work in between there. So if you look, what you see here, down here this is a 5-gallon bucket full of concrete with a spike and washer set in the center, because you have to transfer your control down. And if I remember right, this was like a 48-inch pipe. It was pretty small. And so we had to transfer our control down, and it had to stay in there as the water would maybe come up or go down, but it was never dry. And then you can barely see here, but there's sandbags. And so you sandbag your bucket with your control in the center. And then you set up a tripod above you. You position that spike. Then you go down into the hole, down into the ladder. You can see the ladder here. You set up your instrument over it, but then you sandbag and you set your legs inside sandbags. And that steadies up your instrument. So that's what it looks like. And that's how you set up the control to go into what we'd call a live line. Now, when you do a live line, or when you go into a line, there's a few considerations there, safety considerations. You know, it's dark down there. There isn't lighting in an existing line. So you'll see that I have a hard hat with a light on, because as you get away from the light above, usually at the manhole, it's pretty dark in there. There's no source of light. Of course, you want a hard hat because in this particular case, I think it was a 48-inch line. You see me bent over there. That was about as tall as you could get. You'll notice that I have a safety harness on. And the reason is we put a 3-point tripod directly above the person at the manhole, and you were tied off to that tripod so that if some kind of noxious gas came in or something and knocked you out, they could crank you up and they could get down there to save the other person. Because what you would do is you would work your way up to from a manhole, work your way up to the instrument, because you couldn't get down in there. And then you would work your way from the instrument to the next manhole. Now your instrument underground, especially in the water with a short window there, doesn't measure that far. The EDM doesn't travel, and so you can only go about 150 feet. So that's just the nature of it. Also keep in mind that your radios don't work the way they do above the surface. You have very limited range. However, you don't really need radios because you can talk down the pipe pretty easy. There's no noise down there. It's a real flat, quiet environment. It doesn't matter what's going on up top, because it's very quiet and very flat. So noise is not really an issue down there. But those are some of the considerations when you're working in an underground live tunnel like this. Okay, so if you look at the screen here, this is how a jack and bore works. They have a pit, they dig this out, shown here on the screen, and then they have a boring machine. This is a launch pit or chamber, they call it, and they bore through this way to a receiving pit. And in this case, we're under a freeway, but in the case shown on the diagram here, you're going underneath buildings. And then they put the pipe in. And so that's that's what it looks like when they're doing the boring. And if you look at, this was actually the receiver pit, and you'll see that they're punching through here. They're not quite there yet, but this is what the receiving pit looks like. And to go back, that would be in this area here. And this is a relatively small pipe, like I said, 120 inches. So This is what it looks like as you go into the pipe. And this is a pipe that's already been installed, or this is actually the same pipe, but as it's been installed. But you can see that you have a lot of muck down here, and this is relatively cleaned out. Usually, I'm used to seeing more muck in there, but that's how it looks when you're doing a jack and bore. So how do you get the center of this pipeline and have consistent vertical measurements? Well, you build a jig, and here's how you do it. You get a 2x4 that has some relationship to the diameter of the pipe. You don't want this to be past the middle point inside of the pipe, but you also don't want it to be too low so that it's actually in the mud. So you get a 2x4 and you drill a hole in the center. Place a 5/8 bolt with two washers. The washers actually help spread it out. And you put a 5/8 threaded bolt, coarse thread, through the hole. You notice that's a snug fit. And you have a bolt in the center of your 2x4. The glass will screw onto that. Next, what you need a level, because this can't be out of level like this or like this, because it won't give you good horizontal and vertical. So you have these Home Depot levels that actually go over the top of your 2x4. And I have some better diagrams. You don't need to squint, but I just want to show you how simple it is. So you do this, you put your level bubble on there, and you screw your glass on. Now, when you put this in the center of your pipe, or when you put this in the pipe and it's level, you're in the center of that pipe with a fixed HI. Let's go ahead and look at a couple slides, and it'll become clear if it's not already. Now, out of the muck, you've created your jig and you set it in the pipe. And you look here and you can see that this straddles the pipe. Here's your level bubble. Here's your 5/8 thread. And that distance from the glass to the flow line will always be the same HI. These pipes are built consistently and uniformly. And so you measure that in a dry piece of pipe, and then you never have to worry about the muck in the bottom of it, in the bottom of the pipe. Now, up close, it looks like this. These are your level butt vials, one here and one here, your 5/8 thread in the center with your glass on. Now, this total operation jig built cost me less than $11 total to buy the threads and the bolt and everything. And here's a close-up of the level bubble. This would be your left right, and this would be your tilt to and from towards the gun on the center of the pipe. So if you have your glass on the center of the 2x4, when that 2x4 is level, you're on the center of the pipe, and you're also equal distance from the flow line in every section of pipe that you shoot. So next time you need to determine the alignment of a pipe, this is the jig you're going to want to make. It's going to cost you less than $11 to make, and you'll have a fixed elevation from the bottom of the pipe. And what I also recommend further is each section of the pipe, each joint, is you want to measure on each side of it. So let's say you had 8-foot lengths of pipe, you would get a shot at let's say 780, and then on the other side at 820. And the reason is you want to be able to see that buckle, or you want to see where it goes offline. Particularly, you're concerned about the vertical. So you're taking two shots within about a half a foot of each other, walking 8 feet, two shots, two shots, two shots. Then you bring that in, and that's going to give you a very tight alignment to measurement to the alignment. Put away your clown shoes, pack away your mini bike. Don't be measuring, mucking around in the mud. Just build yourself a jig, walk down the pipe, and get good measurements. Thank you, and have a nice day.